When I came home from the ICU, still weak, still leaning on a cane, my daughter was standing in the foyer of my $12 million house, holding a sold contract. She looked straight into my eyes and whispered, "Dad, you were not supposed to survive." I did not answer. I just reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the document that changed everything. Before we continue, thank you for being here. Please subscribe and tell me in the comments where you are listening from. People think the worst pain comes from illness. They are wrong. It comes from your own blood turning their back on you. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Richard Hale. I am 62 years old, living in Charleston, South Carolina, in the house I built with my own hands. People call it a $12 million estate. To me, it is simply home. Every piece of wood, every stone, every quiet corner carries the memory of the woman I loved. My wife, Anna. She passed away 6 years ago, and the world has felt quieter ever since. I have 2 children, my son, Michael, who has always had my steady spirit, and my daughter, Emily, bright, beautiful, sharp. When she was younger, she used to follow me around my construction sites, asking how I built everything. But after her mother passed, something inside her shifted. She became distant, careful, focused on money in a way that always felt a little cold. Still, she was my daughter. I believed time would soften the edges life had carved into her. I believed she would find her way back. For a while, things were peaceful. I spent my mornings by the river. I cooked simple meals. I talked with Michael every Sunday. I thought I was moving into a quiet chapter of my life, a chapter where nothing big would happen anymore. But quiet days have a strange way of hiding storms. They settle over your life like a soft blanket, until one small movement shows you something sharp underneath. Looking back now, I can see the signs. But at the time, I had no idea what was coming. No idea how fast the ground beneath me would open. No idea how close I was to losing everything I had ever worked for. Not because of strangers, not because of illness, but because of the person I once held in my arms as a baby. The truth is, betrayal does not enter your life with thunder. It comes in small steps, a tone you almost ignore, a sentence you brush off, a glance that lingers too long on something that belongs to you. And for me, it began on a quiet evening, with Emily standing in my living room, looking around the house the way someone looks at a prize they already think belongs to them. That was the first spark, the first shift in the air. The moment when everything began to turn. It happened on a quiet night, the kind of night when the house feels still and the river outside moves like a soft breath. I was sitting in the den reading when I heard the front door open. Emily stepped inside with a smile that felt practiced. She looked around the living room, her eyes moving over the walls, the furniture, the high ceilings. Not with appreciation, with calculation. She walked over to me, sat down, and said lightly, almost as if it meant nothing, "Dad, have you ever thought of downsizing?" It was such a simple question, so gentle, but something in me tightened. I had spent years building this house. Every beam had my hands on it. Every detail came from nights when I stayed up planning how to make it perfect for my family. Downsizing was never part of the picture. I looked at her, trying to understand why she would ask that. She just smiled, smooth and soft, as if she were asking about the weather. "A place this big," she continued, "wouldn't it be easier if someone else managed the money, just so you can rest?" There was nothing wrong with her words on the surface, but her eyes told a different story. Sharp, calculating, watching me too closely, as if checking my reaction. I told her I was fine. I told her I planned to stay here for the rest of my life, and she nodded, acting as if she understood, acting as if she was only being thoughtful. But something inside me felt unsettled, like the air had shifted, and I could not quite explain why. When she left that night, she gave me a hug, a soft one, a little too soft. And as the door closed behind her, I found myself standing in the hallway, staring at the space she had just walked through. I could not shake the feeling that she had not come to visit me. She had come to inspect something. That single sentence, "Have you ever thought of downsizing?" kept echoing in my mind long after she was gone. It felt too casual to be innocent, too light to be honest. I tried to brush it off, told myself I was being too sensitive, told myself grief had changed her, and maybe she just wanted to make sure I was safe. But deep down, something had cracked, and cracks have a way of widening when you least expect it. I did not know it then, but that night was not about a question. It was the beginning of something larger, something quiet, patient, and dangerous. Because once you notice a shift in someone you love, you start catching the small things you once ignored. The glances, the silence, the way their smile does not reach their eyes anymore. And soon, the spark turns into something else. A warning. One I should have paid more attention to. But the real escalation was still ahead of me. That night stayed with me longer than I expected. Something in Emily's voice, the way she looked around my home, it lingered in the back of my mind like a faint echo. I tried to shake it off, tried to remind myself she was still my little girl, still the child who once ran barefoot across the backyard, laughing while her mother chased her. But memories cannot cover the present forever, not when the present begins to shift. And over the next few weeks, I started to notice things I had never paid attention to before. At first, it was small comments, quiet words. They did not sound sharp, but they landed that way. One afternoon, Emily came by while I was fixing a loose cabinet door in the kitchen. She leaned against the counter, watching me work. Her arms were crossed, her eyes distant, as if she was studying a stranger. She said, "You already lived your life, Dad. Let us have our turn." She said it almost gently, but the words carried weight, like I was standing in the way of something she believed belonged to her. I looked up at her, holding the screwdriver in my hand, not sure how to respond. I had never felt old before. Tired, yes, but not old. But hearing those words from my own daughter, it made something inside me sink. "Emily," I said quietly, "I'm not done living yet." She smiled, but it was tight, not warm, and she left soon after without another word. I remember standing in the kitchen for a long time after she walked out. The cabinet door was fixed, but something else felt loose inside me, like a bolt had come undone without my noticing. Then came the actions. They were small at first, then bigger, then impossible to ignore. One Saturday morning I was coming downstairs when I heard voices in the living room. I thought Michael might have stopped by, but when I walked in I froze. Emily and her husband Daniel were standing in the center of the room, holding measuring tapes, measuring the length of the walls, discussing furniture placement, talking about opening the space. They did not see me at first, and for a moment I just watched them. My own daughter, planning something I was not even part of. When I stepped forward, they startled. Emily let out a nervous laugh. "Oh, Dad," she said. "Too sweet, too quick. We were just, planning ahead." "Planning what?" I asked. She shrugged as if the answer did not matter. Daniel avoided my eyes. There was a strange chill in the room, one I could not shake off. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong, like I had walked into a conversation not meant for me, even though it was happening in my own house. They left soon after, claiming they had other errands. But that image stayed in my mind, my daughter measuring the walls of a home that was still mine. After that day, the pressure began. I would walk into my office and find real estate flyers on my desk, pictures of smaller homes, retirement communities, articles about simplifying life. At first I thought she had dropped them by accident, but the flyers kept coming. Always neatly placed, always waiting for me. One morning I found a brochure about property taxes slipped under my coffee mug, as if she wanted to remind me how burdensome this place could be. I picked it up, walked into the hallway, and asked her, "Emily, why do you keep bringing these here?" She looked at me with a calm, cold smile. "Dad, I'm just trying to help. You cannot handle a place this big forever. It's time to think about the future." "This is still my home," I said, softly but firmly. And her smile widened just a little. For now, for now. 2 simple words, but they felt like a door closing somewhere. I wish that was the worst of it. But things kept unfolding, layer by layer. Like she had a plan. She was slowly moving forward, waiting for the right moment. Then came the night everything changed. It was late, almost midnight. I had been feeling strange all day, dizzy, tired, lightheaded. I thought it was nothing, maybe just dehydration. But in the bathroom the world suddenly tilted. I felt a sharp pain in my stomach, and the next thing I knew, I was on the cold floor, unable to move, unable to speak. I heard footsteps. Then Emily's voice. She knelt beside me, panic in her words. She called an ambulance, her hands shaking as she tried to keep me awake. For a moment, I saw the daughter I remembered. Worried, frightened. But even then, a part of me wondered if she was afraid for me, or afraid of what would happen if I did not wake up. At the hospital, things spiraled quickly. Doctors said I had a severe gastric bleed, that I needed the ICU, that I had been close to losing my life. Emily stood in the corner, silent, her eyes fixed on the doctor as he explained my condition. Then, when she thought I was asleep, she leaned toward him and asked quietly, "If something happens, who handles the estate?" The words cut through me, not because of what she asked, but because of when she asked it. It was too soon, too cold, too prepared. But the worst betrayal happened when I was unconscious. While I was in the ICU, drifting in and out of awareness, Emily told the hospital that I was not mentally capable. She said I was confused. She said I could not make decisions for myself. And she tried to obtain temporary authority over my estate, my home, my life's work, and I had no idea. When I woke, she was smiling at me, gentle, caring, as if nothing had happened, as if she had not just tried to step into my place while I was still breathing. Looking back now, I realize that betrayal does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it pretends to hold your hand while quietly pulling something from your pocket. The signs had been there. The comments, the actions, the pressure, the questions about the future. But nothing prepared me for the truth, waiting on the other side of that hospital room. Nothing prepared me for the moment when I would learn exactly how far my own daughter had gone, and how close I had come to losing everything. And the truth did not come from Emily. It came from a stranger, someone who had nothing to gain and nothing to lose, someone who saw what my own daughter tried to hide. And that moment changed everything. I had always believed that truth arrives through the people closest to you. But in my case, it came from someone who barely knew my name. A few days into my stay in the ICU, when the machines around me had stopped beeping so urgently and my mind felt clearer, I began noticing a woman who cleaned the hallway outside my room every morning. Her name tag read Rosa. She always greeted me with a soft smile, sometimes pausing for a moment just to ask if I needed an extra blanket or if I wanted the lights dimmed. Small things, kind things. On the morning everything changed, she stepped into my room with a look I had never seen on her face, worried, tense, almost frightened. She adjusted the trash bin, wiped a counter, then leaned closer as if she were checking the monitors. "Mr. Hale," she whispered, "I need to tell you something, but you must stay calm." My heart slowed. I nodded. She glanced at the doorway, making sure no one was listening. Then she said, "Your daughter. She was outside your room last night. She was on the phone. I heard her. I felt my breath catch." "What did she say?" I asked quietly. Rosa hesitated, her voice dropping even lower. She said, "You would be gone in a week, and that the house needed to close before that." For a moment the room felt too small. My hands went numb. It was as if the air had turned thick enough to choke on. I stared at her, trying to process her words. My daughter, planning the sale of my home, while assuming I would not survive long enough to stop her. Rosa's eyes softened. "I'm sorry. I did not want to believe what I heard. But it didn't sound like worry. It sounded like preparation. Something inside me shifted. Not anger, not sadness. Just a cold, steady clarity like a door had opened, revealing everything I had tried not to see. Rosa went to the charge nurse. The nurse went to the attending physician. And within an hour, the doctor came into my room holding a tablet, his expression serious. "Mr. Hale," he said, "we reviewed your charts, your responses, and the footage from the past few days. You are fully conscious, fully coherent, and fully capable of making your own decisions." He turned the screen toward me. There was security footage, me speaking clearly to staff, answering questions, asking for water, adjusting my position, all with full awareness. And then he showed me something else. Documents. Documents sent from Emily to a lawyer. A purchase agreement for my $12 million home, waiting only for my signature. Except it wasn't mine. The signature looked like mine, but the curves were wrong, the pressure uneven, the slant different. A forgery. My hand trembled slightly as I stared at it, not because of the document itself, but because of what it meant. She had already planned everything. She had sent the papers. She had tried to take control of the estate. She had acted as if I were already gone. The doctor placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone," he said. "We will protect your rights, but you need a lawyer. Someone you trust." I nodded slowly, the weight of everything settling into my chest. In that moment I understood something simple but devastating. Emily hadn't just overstepped. She had crossed a line so quietly, so carefully, that I almost didn't see it. But now, the truth was in front of me, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. I lay back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling, letting the reality wash over me. The betrayal was deeper than I imagined, but so was the clarity. I knew what I had to do next. Not fight her, not confront her, not yet, because if she believed I was weak, then weakness would become my greatest weapon. And from that quiet, cold moment in the hospital bed, my plan began. Lying in that hospital bed with the truth finally uncovered, something inside me settled. Not anger, not even shock anymore, just a steady understanding of what needed to happen next. Emily believed I was slipping away. She believed she had won, and if that was the picture she wanted to see, then I would let her see it. I started by softening my voice whenever she visited. I moved slower, asked for help more often, let my hands tremble just a little. I watched the way her eyes brightened each time I seemed weaker. She thought it meant control. She thought it meant time was running out. But in silence, I was building something she could not see. The doctor helped write a note in my file saying I was recovering slowly. Nothing false, just enough to keep Emily comfortable in her assumptions. Meanwhile, after one quiet conversation with him, he connected me with someone who could help me take the next step. That's how I met attorney Jonathan Pierce. Jonathan walked into my room one afternoon with a calm confidence, the kind that comes from years of seeing people try to outsmart the law. He sat beside my bed, opened a folder, and said, "I'm here to protect your home, your estate, and your peace. We'll move carefully." And we did. Together, we started gathering everything that showed what Emily had done. He pulled the email she had sent to the lawyer. He obtained the draft of the forged contract. He recorded the doctor's statements, confirming my clarity. He documented the moment she tried to claim I was not mentally capable. Every piece was laid out carefully, each one telling a part of the truth she tried to hide. Then Jonathan said something that stayed with me. "Don't confront her. She's expecting that. She's prepared for it. But she's not prepared for silence." So I stayed quiet. And I prepared. With Jonathan's help, I transferred the ownership of my house into a trust that removed Emily as a beneficiary. The estate was no longer something she could reach, no longer something she could manipulate, no longer hers to imagine inheriting. While paperwork was being finalized, the hospital arranged for an early discharge. Not public, not announced, quiet, controlled. The kind of discharge no one outside the staff would know about. As I left the ICU, Rosa caught my hand. "Be careful," she said softly. "Some people hide their intentions behind sweet voices." I thanked her. She had seen what I tried to pretend wasn't there. From the hospital, I didn't go home right away. I met with a small security firm, one Jonathan recommended. Men who understood discretion, who knew how to remain invisible while protecting a property. They moved into place before I even stepped foot on my driveway. Then, on a cool morning, cane in hand, but strength returning quietly beneath the surface, I went home. No warning, no call, no message to Emily. It was better that way, because surprises reveal the truth faster than questions ever could. As the car pulled up to my gate, I looked at the house I had built with my own hands, the house that had once been filled with warmth, laughter, and the sound of my wife's voice echoing through the halls. Now it felt quieter, heavier, but it was still mine. Walking through the front door, I felt a slow breath leave my chest. Not relief, not yet, but something close to acceptance. I had spent my whole life taking care of others, my family, my workers, anyone who needed help. And now, for the first time, I was taking care of something else. The truth. And Emily had no idea I was standing there alive, aware, and carrying everything she thought she had hidden. She believed she had played her final card. But she forgot. I had a few cards of my own. And the moment she saw me standing in that foyer, stronger than she expected, everything would begin to shift. Because she had spent weeks preparing for my absence. She never prepared for my return. I didn't sleep that night. After the will was read, after the room froze, after breaths caught like broken glass, I walked away from the table, letting my children stand there with their forced smiles and trembling hands. I could still hear the lawyer's voice echoing behind me. As of today, Daniel transfers full operational control of the $40 million trust and all company voting rights to Maya, effective immediately. A silence followed, the kind that tells you everything is about to break. By morning, that silence had turned into something far louder. It started with a soft knock on my guest room door, polite practice, too gentle to be real. When I opened it, my son Kevin stood there, wearing the expression of a man trying desperately to stay polite for the sake of not losing everything. "Dad," he said, rubbing his thumb against the inside of his palm, "we should talk about yesterday." "About the will," I replied, keeping my voice calm. His eyes flickered. That was all it took. The crack behind his smile widened. "Yeah, about the will." We walked into the hallway, and for the first time, I saw it. His facade slipping the resentment he had rehearsed for years, rising like steam. He wasn't pretending anymore. "You blindsided us," he said, trying to soften his tone, but failing miserably. "Me, Jenna. We've been running the numbers, Dad. You're making a mistake giving her everything just because she—" He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "Just because Maya didn't treat me like a burden. Just because she didn't once ask, 'What do I get?' I didn't answer, so he pushed further. You know she's manipulating you, right? You know she's been enough," I said. The word echoed down the hall. He wasn't expecting me to raise my voice. He'd gotten used to a father who stayed silent while his children negotiated my life like it was a contract they were owed. Before he could respond, his wife Jenna stepped out of the kitchen, arms crossed, lips pressed tight, scanning me like I was a problem she needed to solve. "So she said you really handed everything to her just like that. After we spent years building this family, after all we do for you, all you do for me," I repeated, not angry, just tired. And then the moment came, the one that would expose them completely. Jenna leaned closer and whispered, "She doesn't deserve that money. We do. The slip, the confession. We deserve your money. Not we love you. Not we'll support your choice. Not even let's talk about this. Just entitlement, raw, unmasked, unfiltered." Before I could answer, Maya stepped into the hallway, holding a mug of tea, still half asleep. She didn't know what she was walking into. She had no idea that everything was about to shatter around her. Kevin turned toward her with a smile, so forced it almost looked painful. "Maya, congratulations," he said. "Looks like you're the new boss." But the tone, it wasn't congratulating. It was a warning wrapped in false warmth. She sensed it too, her shoulders stiffened, eyes lowering. She started to back away, but Jenna stepped forward. "You must be so proud," Jenna said, "winning my father-in-law over with your little good girl act." And just like that, the entire house tilted. I stepped between them. "Stop!" But the masks were already off, and there was no putting them back on. Kevin took a deep breath, one of those breaths people take before saying something they can't take back. "If you think this is over," he said quietly, "it's not. That money, that company, you have no idea what you're walking into." He glanced at his wife. She nodded. And in that second, I understood this wasn't anger. This was strategy. They were regrouping, calculating, preparing to fight for something they believed belonged to them by birthright. Maya didn't say a word. She simply looked at me, confused, frightened, trying to understand why people she had treated with kindness were suddenly staring at her like an intruder. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's going to be okay," I whispered, but inside, I wasn't so sure. Because the moment I saw their faces, truly saw them without their practiced smiles, I knew something with absolute clarity. This wasn't the end of the conflict. It was the beginning, and they were about to make their next move. I should have known they wouldn't stay quiet for long. After that hallway confrontation, the house fell into a strange, artificial calm, like everyone agreed to pretend nothing happened. But silence from people like Kevin and Jenna isn't peace. It's preparation. By the next afternoon, the first sign appeared. Maya and I were in the study, going through old company files, trying to piece together what responsibilities she'd inherit as the new decision-maker. She was focused, taking careful notes, still unsure why I trusted her so deeply, but trying. Always trying. Then her phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times in a row. She glanced at the screen and her face drained of color. "It's emails," she whispered. "From the company board." I leaned closer. 4 members, people who had worked with me for years, were suddenly concerned about the transfer of voting rights. They requested an urgent review. They wanted a temporary freeze. They wanted a meeting without me. Without me. A chill slid down my spine. Kevin had moved faster than I expected, and he wasn't working alone. Before I could respond, footsteps approached, slow, rehearsed. Kevin appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, wearing the expression of a man who believed he had just regained control of the boardroom. "Dad," he said casually, "can we talk business?" I didn't answer. I just stared at him. He stepped further inside, eyes shifting between Maya and the documents on the desk. "You didn't think we'd just sit back, did you?" he said quietly. "The board has questions. Big ones. You can't hand power to someone with no track record and expect everyone to applaud. Maya's hands shook on the papers. He noticed and smiled, not warmly, triumphantly. I'm trying to help, he continued. If you reverse the decision, we can avoid all this trouble. No meetings, no investigations, no pushback. There it was, the offer that wasn't an offer. I kept my voice steady. I'm not reversing anything. Kevin's expression hardened, just for a second, but long enough. Then you'd better be ready, he said, because this is only phase 1. He left without waiting for a reply. Maya sat still for a long moment, breathing slowly, like she was trying to anchor herself. Then she looked at me, really looked at me. Why are they doing this? She whispered. I didn't sugarcoat it. Because the moment you were chosen, they realized they couldn't control you. Outside the study window, the sky was turning, a heavy, gray, quiet, tense waiting. Just like them, they had made their first move, and it wouldn't be their last. Kevin's warning echoed long after he left the study, settling in the air like a challenge neither of us could ignore. And as the gray sky outside deepened, I realized something else. If they were confident enough to pressure the board, then they were confident enough to attack from another angle. Kevin never relied on a single plan. He always layered his moves, one feeding the next. It didn't take long for the second strike to arrive. That evening, Maya and I sat down at the kitchen table quietly, going over the emails again, searching for what Kevin wasn't saying. She was calmer now, more focused, like she'd made a private decision not to back down. I admired that. Her strength wasn't loud, it was steady, the kind that only grows under pressure. Then the intercom buzzed. I frowned. I'm not expecting anyone. A security guard's voice came through, tense and unsure. Sir, there's someone here asking for you. Says it's urgent. Before I could ask who it was, the guard added, It's Miss Ellison from the bank. The bank. My pulse tightened. Maya and I exchanged a look before we walked to the foyer. When the door opened there, she was professional suit, small briefcase, polite smile. But her eyes held the same kind of tension as the guard's voice. Mr. Hale, she said softly, I'm afraid we need to discuss some activity on your accounts. Of course Kevin would go after the money. We invited her in and she laid out the papers on the living room table. Multiple withdrawal attempts. Suspicious transfers flagged within the past hour. Someone trying to move large sums tied directly to our holding company. But the detail that hit hardest was this. The requests were submitted using your son's authorization codes. Maya stiffened. I closed my eyes for a moment. Kevin wasn't just posturing anymore. He was accelerating. The banker cleared her throat, lowering her voice. Because of your long-standing relationship with the institution, I froze the transactions. But I can only hold them briefly, without formal confirmation from you. I signed quickly, decisively. And when she left, the house fell into a heavy silence. Maya broke it first. He's trying to corner us, she said quietly. If he can't stop the power transfer, he'll weaken the finances. Make the board see you as unstable. Force them to question every decision. She was right. This wasn't about money. It was about credibility, control, narrative. Kevin wanted to show the world I was slipping and that he was the only one capable of taking charge. But he underestimated two things. First, the strength I'd regained, and second, the daughter who stood beside me, no longer uncertain, no longer doubting her place. As I looked at Maya, I realized something important. They thought they were pushing us into a corner. But they were pushing us into position, and when people push too hard, they don't notice what's building right behind them. In the days that followed, my home felt different. Not heavier, not darker, just quieter. The kind of quiet that settles when a storm finally moves on, leaving the air clean, even if the ground is still wet. I spent my mornings on the back porch, watching the river move with that slow, steady rhythm I had always loved. For the first time in a long while, I could breathe without wondering who was waiting to take something from me. Michael visited often. He didn't bring big speeches or judgment. He just sat with me, shared coffee, and let me talk when I felt ready. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. Sometimes silence says more than any words. As for Emily, I kept my distance. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Some wounds don't heal on a timetable. Some people need time to face the mirror before they can face anyone else. I didn't want revenge to follow me into the rest of my life. So I let the law do what the law does. And I let myself move forward. The house, my house, stood exactly where it had always stood. Strong, solid, untouched. But its meaning changed. It was no longer just the place I built with my hands. It became the place where I finally learned that protecting your heart is just as important as protecting your home. Family can break you, but they can also teach you what loyalty should look like. And now, when I lock the front door at night, I do it with peace in my chest. Not fear, not bitterness, just peace. Thank you for listening to my story. If you were standing in my shoes, would you open the door for her again one day? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, please like, share, and subscribe. There are many stories inside quiet homes. Sometimes they're louder than we think.